Cool. Hi everybody, welcome out to Helicon West. My phone, right now we're having some video camera issues, so my phone has become our recording device, which is a problem because my phone is also how I read the mission statement. So we're flying off memory right now. But tonight we are featuring Alex, Baldwin, and Sarah Woodbury as our readers. We're very excited to have them. As a little bit of information about Helicon West, we are a featured reader writing workshop and open mic series. We welcome all levels of craft, ability, and skill. So if you would like to read in the open mic after Sarah and Alex, there is a sign-up sheet by the coffee and by John and Joseph. You can write your name. You'll have 7 minutes to read whatever you want to read. We're uncensored, so literally anything you want to read, we'll sit here and listen. And if you go for longer than 7 minutes, you will be clapped off the stage and you get to go sit back down. And it's nice clapping unless Charles does it, and then you'll never know. Yeah, that's right. Other announcements, there is free to you coffee right back there, so help yourself. If you need some caffeine, it's great. Other than that, I announced that it's uncensored. Land acknowledgement, this land was inhabited by the nations of the Shoshone tribe. And we want to acknowledge that at every opportunity. There's like a beautifully written statement that I wish I had memorized that actually gives it the gravitas that it deserves. But that's on my phone, so I will acknowledge that and hope that that is good. Other than that, everything is recorded. If you read during the open mic and you don't want anybody to see it, just let me know and I will stop recording, and then I'll start again once you're done. And then also, the last two things, we have a tip jar. If you have a really good time tonight and have some pocket change, you're welcome to leave some money for us. It helps us keep going. And then our next event will be September 12th, and that will be Amber Karen, who is one of our faculty, and she is incredible. And that will be at the Thatcher Young Mansion off First South in downtown. So those are all of our announcements. That's a little bit about Helicon West.
That was heroic.
Thank you, thank you. We're gonna get the camera fixed so that I don't have to do this on the fly. Mean. Just kidding. Thank you, Charles. And now we'll let Alex take it away, and then Sarah will follow him, and then we'll have the open mic.
All right, hi. Can everybody hear okay? Good? Okay. That's important in reading.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes. So 5 days from now will mark 7 years since the time that Sarah and I first met. And this is the first opportunity that we've had to do a public poetry reading together. And so thank you, Sean. Thank you, Helicon West. This is a singular gift. And I'm so excited for all of you to get to experience Sarah's poetry probably for the first time. I grew up in the creative writing department here at USU, but she was in the NR, and so I think she snuck past her creative muse right past the creative writing department when she was here as an undergrad. But yeah, it's going to be a feast, and I'm glad to get to do the table setting. And I really just hope that something about tonight you guys find to be delicious. I've got 9 poems for you today in 3 movements. This first movement I'm calling Opening Cartoon. This poem's titled, "The Day Dad Turned My Brother into a Cartoon." Dad's at the head of the table doing bills. Reggie's right next to him, jabbing him in the shoulder, daring him to an arm wrestle. Just one, come on. Dad's shaking his head. Reggie's body has him first team all conference at shortstop, point guard, and quarterback, recruiters wanting him in all three, sculpted like Brad Pitt after Fight Club. A work of cinematic art, Reggie's body is. Dad's body has him 2 knees sans cartilage, bone-on-bone vestiges of a pro baseball career ending before the kid giant wanted it to, and a morbidly obese heart. Reggie's laughing that Dad's too scared, wussing out. Dad's doing bills, reminding him of the age-old truth that you can never beat up your father, reminding him that he didn't make it up, he's sorry, but he doesn't know why, but that's just the way it is. Reggie's all right arm and ready on the table, poised rigid and expecting to clasp with his open right hand's fingers, inviting Dad wigglingly. At this point, he's pushing Dad, destabilizing him, sending his pen scrawling out of the lines. Dad's a perfectionist, knows he's going to have to scrap this check for a new one. Shifting in their seats, Reggie and Dad entangle, father and son, father versus son, father or son. In the time it takes to say, holy shit, Dad's driving Reggie's hand into the tabletop with such energy, Reggie's entire cinematic body lifts from his chair and in mid-air and mid-place spins a full 360-degree front flip, then lands flat on his back, supine on the floor, looking up at Dad with wonderful eyes. All right, starting the second movement. The second movement I'm calling Anxious Orbits. And when I first wrote this poem, I didn't even think to include the Great Salt Lake. And in the years since, thanks in large part to the amazing artwork that Sarah has been involved with and provided for the region, and also other artists in her community there, made me realize that I should not be taking her for granted so much. And so I added a couple of stanzas to the lake with this poem. And I'm just very grateful for the artwork that's brought my attention to the Great Salt Lake. This is called Snowshoeing Through Smog on Mount Olympus, Utah. Under a blue sky and above fresh snow, inside an inversion snagged against the Wasatch Mountains like tissue on barbed wire. Off of livestock feedlot scat, unseeable compounds rise, conspire with brake light plumes slipping up from the frost and thaw of exhaust pipes. It's another red air alert day where everything that exists becomes the only thing that exists, creating for Salt Lake City's cultural bubble a concrete shape, a world both dreamy and toxic. Hidden up inside this world, a Brigham Young monument points to blank. Hidden up inside this world, a golden angel has raised a golden trumpet in honor of blank. And the lake, drying up inside this world, clings to rib cages whose old songs emptied into her shores through hollow bones. This sludge stain we've encased ourselves in, this natural cloud's seepage, reveals any sermons on our separate nature as illusion. It's the stuff of visions, this gray-brown murk, sunlit as if the gray-brown were itself inherently luminous. The misty theatrics troping every visual out of the epics, parables you can walk through, feel percolating along the hairs rising off your skin. All right, this next poem needs a little bit of backstory, I think. So there's a cave up in Idaho that is on public land and is well loved by the locals, and so it's pretty trashed. But there were also an incredible number of archaeological discoveries made in this cave that essentially wiped out all of the accepted thought and theory of the early inhabitants of that area. And so when I learned that, I thought I got to get myself up into that cave, go deep into the darkest part that I could, sit down and wonder about the tenuous nature of knowing a thing. And I don't know how many of you have been in like the pure blackness deep in the belly of a cave, but when your eyes are open, it doesn't matter. It's just as if your eyes were closed. But since your eyes are open, your brain starts to try to convince you that you can make out things, that you can see things. And it's, and again, the tenuous nature of knowing a thing. And so this sonnet is sort of exploring that when I made a trip up to this cave with a friend. It's titled, Turning Off the Headlamp, Wilson Butte Cave, Idaho. The chamber folds into my brain as we sit in this afterlight. Your eyelid smooth. Your voice leans forward, rests chin to knee, rubs cool dirt loose from your toes. Unruly, a drop of water snaps. There's room enough for you to brush my shoulder with your knuckle, the way you touch when I make you laugh. You, of course, correct me as I bungle the shape of you. Nice image, but unrubbed, your feet remain curling underneath soft ground, mussing a history of digs, tubes of Colgate with slothbone tools, fire hearths with dented cores, petrified bison skulls. The way you vanish into light, untouchable. All right, this next poem is a very short one with very short lines. It just has 2 feet per line, which is poetic speak for basically like a syllable and an unaccented syllable and then a syllable and then an unaccented syllable. And so like my name, Alex Baldwin, that's 2 feet. And so each line is about the same measure as my name. And it'll make sense why each line is only 2 feet by the content of the poem. It's titled, From a Ghost Town Named Bonanza, Custer County, Idaho. Dredging the creek bedrock up turned out 2 feet square of gold. This by this much. Mountain valleys, when turned inside out, look an awful lot like gravel pits. Or it turns out, mounds of Boot Hill graves, named after what we wear through, scouring to own, in the end, more than just our 2 feet, at last square with the earth and cold. And in this poem, I'm going to refer to the Yellowstone. When I do so, I'm talking about the river, not the national park. It's titled Ego Poetics, on Highway 89, Paradise Valley, Montana. All in the cool light, the Yellowstone a slick of blue obsidian, mountains the night before's residue, and maybe one sweet epithet more I can drape over this valley before you once again undroop your head. I can impress you, help you to properly miss what you're missing with beautiful words. Just give me a little while longer. Could I, at what parallel, what luck would have it latitude, study this dawn all winter on its poised horizon? Any chance you would like how that sounds? But the rumble strip interrupts us back to road, disturbs you enough you say, watch the highway, guy. It bends, and you slip back down into your chest. How was I going to describe this again? The Yellowstone, a street curb gray now, like the edge of our childhood sidewalks we knew had something for us to prove to each other. Our teetering arms, dried mud constellating our shoes and socks. So now, perfect timing for the third movement to commence. And this third movement I'm calling Water Bodies. These poems are my most recent work. And so some of these are kind of in a draft state. So if you think, that wasn't very good, just remember, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get a lot better. The potential is limitless. This first poem of this movement is titled, There is a Bear Who Swallows Salmon Whole. There is a bear who swallows salmon whole, swallows their dreams so completely, All the bends left before the gravelly shores of their ancestors nearly catch in the bear's throat. Swallows their memories and fears, the bear gorging with oceans and rapids leapt in brilliant flashes of red. And the salmon keep swimming, as if they are still alive, as if their run could compel the stomach upstream, as if on this warm autumn afternoon, the bear wouldn't disappear into what remains of an old-growth rainforest and doze off on a bed of ferns at the base of an ancient spruce. This next one is dedicated to Sarah. It's titled, "One Evening While You Teach Me the Names of Birds." Your laughs tumble from your smile like the river scatters light across herself. Shimmers lapping the shore's pebbles into sequins. I could see you so dressed. I hold a palm of dripping sunset to your hair. You are the river's sister. You bend low and braid your body into the gleam. Two creatures of water, you and her. All this flickering, and you join her shadows below. Your ghosts twist and curl and stretch deep. I sit by driftwood slick with moss, each green thread a string of darkening pearls, tiny gold dusks. If I find you again, I'll try to recall your friend's name. Phalarope, was he? And of course, hope to make you laugh. This next one, the title comes straight from a coloring book. And it was also I was lucky enough to get it, it landed a nice home in the American Journal of Poetry. It's titled, "Can You Draw More Sheep for Ammon to Protect?" Here we have some Mormons in the house. The woman I love has a family that goes to church in Utah. To my left, in the same pew, a small child lays out an array of crayons across her mother's lap and flips open a book. The coloring book gives Ammon a sword, the robbers clubs, and the sheep a streamy meadow in the foreground of snow-capped triangles. It's the scene right before the story, which the picture leaves for the parents to tell. Ammon slices off the arms of the sheep robbers to then dump them, the arms, in a pile at the foot of the king as proof of his value as a servant. Why would a coloring book ask a child to draw more sheep into this story? Into this need to be protected? Who wants to be born into such a scene, into such a need? But when the girl finishes making Ammon's legs green, his war skirt black and orange, and his sword yellow, she looks up at me bored. So I hear myself say, "Draw more sheep." As she does, I think about the woman to my right, the woman I love, the woman who doesn't seem to mind how sweaty our hands become, clasped together through the service. And what she said earlier on the freeway, "I want a baby." It's the scene before the story. There was a billboard for plastic surgery, for laser hair removal. I felt like a sheep in need of protection. I pictured her pregnant as a bag of severed arms. The woman I love wants to have a baby. I feel like a king. All right, this last poem is titled Silence. A wolf pup, broken and orphaned of her pack, sleeps in a rancher's arms. He knows he shouldn't have her. Yet as she heals and grows, he builds her the largest enclosure he could afford, fencing in a meadow shocked with larkspur, a stream so clear rainbow trout glint with stars, and a ponderosa grove wrapped in bark like raw flesh, all to her own, all to his own. He loves her entirely, into a story of that being enough. But she becomes a wolf whose love would cover mountain ranges every day, whose desire burns the grass to dust as she paces a trail into the fence line, a trail into his open window each night, where he yearns for her songs. Her silence howls for years. Thank you.
It's not fair to follow Alex. Oh gosh, okay. I am just really grateful to be here. I echo Alex's thanks to everyone who's here and who's having us. And so I'm gonna start. I was not raised in the creative writing department as Alex was, but I did get to take a couple of classes, and one intro to poetry class I took, which was with Alex as the professor. There were a lot of poems.
Buried the story.
A lot of poems that gushed about stars, and this was my playful response, and it was published in the American Journal of Poetry. So here it is. It is entitled, "The Stars Are Stuffed with Far Too Many Words." I throw some stars in a pot of boiling water and watch them crack open, screaming like clams, as their innards tendril out into thick, glittery, writhing soup. I let my hair down, dance to the scraping, their cankers releasing all the names who force-fed them, and dumped a pail of old big ones on my porch. Alex was much more graceful with his papers. The next poem uses an ancient form that I find really mysteriously difficult, and quite deeply delicious as well. It's the ghazal, and it's about an encounter with one of my dear familiars, snakes, and just one of the most mystical creatures. It's called Rattlesnake Guzzle. Cheatgrass lullabies rasp the stream in tick brown tongues. You and I slide desert refrains with diamonds on our tongues. Your paper tub of pearls is silent on the red rock. You brush my backpack with a glitter of scales, flick flowering tongue. Long jaw could crack me worthless, a cool brown whip, and yet you wouldn't take my sad meat to sour your tongue. You should know that I once slid the body of your cousin open, tiny heart like a ruby in my hands, the coiled blue tongue. You should know that they pickle you for science, sidewinders especially, bottles of tiny gold rattles, brine-drowned tongues. Hate me, but I see why they do it. Pocket the only shining thing in the desert. We pass the stream between droughts of tongues. Please, God, speak to me, Sarah. I'm in love with your scent. The taste of your eyes like pennies, sweet clay pressed toward a sound from your tongue. This next one is entitled Grandfather Costume. What I want is to wrap up in your bones like armor. I just dig them right out of the ground and make a safe place for myself. I could be a hermit crab. Not that your living bones were ever really safe or gentle, not at all that. But if I could be the organs beneath your bones, I would suddenly have the freedom of poking strangers with canes, or announcing crude jokes with loud twinkles pouring from my eyes and piling around the room. That would be safe. I could go wherever I wanted at 3 a.m, talk to strangers on a late bus. I could be angry, could be filled with anger, could stomp around and chop up things that don't work right, like you did to Grandma's clock. I could peek out from my nest inside of your ribs, seeing the world without really being in it, and fall asleep to the siren of my thoughts, normally kept too wrapped in my body, being played through your megaphone, suddenly heard and suddenly strong. Okay, this next one is a Haibin, and it was also published in the American Journal of Poetry. It's entitled, My Blind Brother Who Went Insane. The birds are God, he said, laughing. He was Jesus. Somehow it seems right, a man who had never seen a bird describing the incantations that way, babblings, like the bells our mother hung on his door, the ones he'd feel for and shake too hard before opening. A smile. Unlike the unblind, he only smiled when actually happy. Until we returned from backpacking in the winds and heard the voicemail he left me. The birds aren't God. We found him. He was Einstein. He was on a cruise. He was sweating. He was almost dead. Brain lost in bells. Fallen juniper berries, too many moons for the soil. Okay. Now I have two poems that are prose poems, and they are on various things. So the first one is On Wanting, and it's after Anne Carson. Elusiveness laps at me. I could plunge at it, but that's too terrifying a notion. Acknowledging river caught in my skin brings the twin image of fingers plucking it out. Admitting your eyes avoid mine, taunts with a fish swaying in waters, too fast for me to catch and eat it. Scales peel downstream and attach to my neck like fingers. I can't help but hear their glittering. And the next is entitled On the Sunday Folk. Sunday folk sitting inside a giant womb mostly see red. Plopped where it is on the hill, we all can see the womb and wait for them to emerge new and wet. They come out ready for a nap. We never heard crying. And I have a few that have to do with water, women, and God, which somehow go together in my brain. And I will wait for the clock. I wish that I had a fun little joke. Okay, so this is entitled Lake Body. Silent, my body pulses, breasts moving like choppy waves out on that lake that's always full of a million boats. You take them, their soft crests claimed by you. That is your right in the colonial realm of female body and earth, and taking and staking your claim hard into it. Below, There is a long-toothed fish with hair, tangled in muck, and fingers that reach both little beaches where all the tourists have their umbrellas and sandwiches. They are spilling crumbs. There are flies gathering on clots of fat covered in sand. Ants taking sun chips piece by piece in a chain of glimmering hairs on thoraxes to tunnels going who knows where and making who knows what patterns. Maybe the paths are beautiful. Maybe they reach a place we won't discover. Maybe the colony glows at the deepest part of their home. Maybe they were and do pyramid team building activities when it's completely dark and they've piled the chips up high for winter and arranged the queen's eggs in a sacred glob of mayonnaise. One day, the fish will close her fist and take everything down deep and wrap it in seaweed. And my breasts will shake for no one, everyone. I will at last just be a lake. And this next one is the true story of my accidental stumbling upon a thing that you will find out about. So it's entitled Accidental First Nude Beach, a Villanelle. Sweet Mormon women don't eat the sun these days. The beach screams, body, swallows worn sewn seams, skins jostling a million suns good saints' pores wouldn't. Sky drips down hips in cool, salted loneliness that shouts, undress, undrenched. A mother crouches, ass to tide, bare child gleaming at her breast, a shape a sister's spine could echo. An earring's hot twinkle, ribbons of mammal musk, squeal me, nude on the beach. Our cracked desert hides don't know the sky, but good Mormon girls know salt. We break like waves. Okay, and then I have a couple about relationships and love and sex because this is a poetry reading. So this first one is called Sex from the Other Apartment. Blooms up through the vent. My dog barks, a laugh. I curl up by the metal slats, tuned towards sounds like dreams, the cascading laughter of a woman I have not heard for weeks, canyon run. Or has it been months? These unbounded laugh moans, cool by the time they reach my cheeks, but warm and frothy, mossy green streams, I am certain, on the tongue of whoever she is, and against the pale granite skin of Paul, who lives in the basement. A gift ungiven, yet received like all gifts are. Like flowers presented with their first and only dive toward rot. Like the yellow feathers of a bird and her sweet white smudge on my unmarked window. Like bits of earth pressed into packages and wrapped in dewy cellophane, gathered and offered as if they are ours to give, to accept with blossoming. Okay, and for this next one, no, I don't know if you know what a peachy berry is, but if you don't, it's a small golden fruit that's kind of like a little tomatillo, and it's really sweet, and it's also called a Cape gooseberry. So this is called peachberry bones. I come to you with a peachberry between my teeth, holding a lush, swelling creature crackled from its paper shell is some kind of ecstasy. How it shivers against the bones, threatening to split and spill its hot juice over lips and neck. Its fat little song and mouthful of seeds, waiting to become something rooted and something growing. It won't. I am saving it for you. As women do, I know you will tear this translucent flesh apart. Even before I place it in your palm, I hear the tiny gilt spindles stretch and pop, releasing feel of sun, sweet black mound of compost, cool at night, the dark flowering. I feel the giving in to the quick grate of gristle and jaw. I see your eyes, the flicker of something beautiful in the mouth. I feel the slide back toward places where good warm berries do not grow and they do not crush. Okay, I'm skipping this one because it's very long, so we'll just skip ahead. So this next one is a sonnet that I was excited to have published in Calyx last year. It's called Father at the Piano. He's a jug-handle moon, an arc spilling past into Steinway so keys will palm it up and hand it back to him. Chill plates of ice, numb feeling. Notes give dusk to lines between his teeth, like the night I dove to the deep of a lake, all wrapped in skin and fin-back monsters drifted by, ivory-fleshed, with seeping wounds and glass-washed eyes. I saw the darkness twice. It hid from others, and from our mother who crawled to the shower to wash herself and ready the children for school. Thanks, I tried one night, for staying with her sickness. His eyes slid down, like my scant body, and paled at glimmers of whalebone. Okay, I am going to end with a grouping of 3 poems related to Great Salt Lake, who is one of my loves. As Alex mentioned, I got to work on this lovely poetry dance collaborative film thing that is in the Great Salt Lake Collaborative's anthology, was published last year. And so this is kind of a related project that I'm just sharing a little peek into. And for the first and third poems, if you don't know what a phalarope is, it is a shorebird who spins to get its food to come up. It's really lovely, beautiful. So the first one is entitled Salt Ballerina, for my friend on the shores of Great Salt Lake, Utah. The frost is thin on the grit in the morning, mixes with angled salt crystals and clear blue glass. When all are present, they shatter the shore into a field of stars. They fractal pointed feet, too, into landscapes, bloodied, preparing for sacrifice when dawn cuts in. Nothing she hasn't seen before. She knows her ice pick collarbone is hard to miss. It sharpens her costume of dying phalarope, is probably why she was chosen for this role, even though she left her mother and the Royal New Zealand Ballet, those long white necks. It's been years. She went to school instead, studied food, joined the kitchen at the best farm to table in the West, bins and bins of grown vegetables rotting. Her dense phalarope head muddles the sounds of refinery, other dancers, cold silver moon. Though she can't feel them, the lake's acid tongues keep finding her feet. Another dancer pulls her back, and she grimaces under the bird head, or else she's encrusted in the well-trained smile. You'll go to the best schools. She floats to the water, feels for the solidity of something, anything, maybe earth, heavy metals sparking against granite in the dark. Finds fly carcass and bird bone. This one is entitled Pupil Case Shoreline at Great Salt Lake. Hordes of flies crackle like gold, lick up loud toward a gull's red eyes. Those soft white cheeks are so like clouds, I always thought. Gulls dancing for tiny winged coins. The smell so like rot. October, not long from now. a darkening of wings, a scentless lake. And this is the last one. It's again a hyben, which is one of my favorite forms, and it is called Gristle Hum for Great Salt Lake 2 years from now. Birdsong breaks across fields of salt. Red-winged blackbirds struggling to swallow last night's meteor shower. Caspian terns stringing their shards on the air. Sonic icicles, shutters of stones. Belly memories of brine fly larvae sharp in their guts, the singers rise on cue from the grunt of the lake bed. Webbed feet drip black chrysalis and arsenic. Musk the air with migratory dreams. But the phalaropes will not sing. They are cut off from the music like ghosts. See the brittle bones in the skull hear quarter notes. Count the salted beaks on the shore like rests. The sky hums gristle. Sunrise spills over the last pools of oiled feather backs. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Sarah. It's great to hear you reading. Thank you for being part of our community. I looked at the sign-up sheet and it looks like no one has signed up for open mic. Is that the case? Okay, there are some hands and some head shakes. I saw Snow and Jay, and I haven't met you, but you raised your hand? No, behind. Okay, will you write your name on the sign-up sheet? Okay, perfect. Is there anyone else as the sign-up sheet is getting passed around really fast? Ben? Oh, you're just waving? Hi, Ben. Cool, well, thank you. Sorry to volunteer you instead of... And star? Okay. Okay. That's 4, and normally we announce in 3, but are we okay if we announce in 4? Okay, as soon as I get the sign-up sheet, I'll read those names, just so that I actually name everybody, and then we'll have the open mic. And as a refresher, that's 7 minutes, everybody gets 7 minutes, it's uncensored, so please be prepared for anything, if that's possible. And the last thing that I forgot in our early announcements was I should thank our sponsors. Thank you, Snow, as well. Snow is not a sponsor, she was just being very nice. But thank you to the Logan City Library, to the USU English Department, to Sugar House Review, to Utah Humanities, to Cash Arts, and to our founder and matron saint, Star Colebrook, who will be our 4th reader on the open mic. So, we have Snow, Jay, and I cannot read your handwriting, I'm so sorry.
What?
It's what? Searshot. Okay, thank you.
Name?
I know. What?
That's
Oh,
me.
you're Charles. Thank you. I didn't see that I can read. I can read Searshot. I just didn't know Charles had signed up. Okay, then we're gonna have Jay, Snow, Jay, and Charles, and then I'll get back up and you'll deal with me to announce the last 2 open mics.
It's cursive, Sean.
I know, I'm a millennial.
Everyone can hear me okay. This, it is an essay I wrote about 4.5 years ago. It was actually the first essay I wrote in college. It's what inspired the change to English, and changing my major to English, so it has a special place in my heart. Recently been trying to connect a little bit with my past selves and offer them more empathy and so forth, so this is, I thought it appropriate to read just in kind of in line with that journey.
It is a word meditation, meaning that you start with one word and you layer research bits from that word back and forth with other stories, and so just be prepared for to be some kind of abrupt transitions between those two sections. It's called pomegranate. I watched my mother's fingers work quickly, plucking and pinching and picking. The small pile of seeds in the bowl before her grew slowly as the hard shell of the fruit was plundered, every stray spray of juice releasing another burst of sharpness into the air. Crimson stained the tips of her fingers, soaking downwards into her palm, every now and then accumulating into a dark red droplet that crawled under and clung for a moment before free-falling to the countertop. My mother glanced at me as her hands ceaselessly sought, found, extracted. A thin smile curled at the edge of her mouth at my fascination. "Would you like to try some?" A single seed lay on the scarlet pillow of my mother's palm, outstretched towards me. I hesitated, unsure of the unfamiliar fruit, but curiosity and the gnawing hunger in my stomach quickly overcame caution, and I snatched the seed up, popping it in my mouth. A sourness ignited within, causing a recoil that made my mother laugh. I swallowed and moved my tongue around, uncomfortable with the dryness the seed left behind. My mother looked down at the pomegranate she held, nearly empty. "It'll grow on you," she mused. "Give it time. I doubt I liked it much when I was 6. She dropped the last 2 seeds onto her pile and started munching, carelessly discarding the carcass while I chewed my tongue in doubt. I had complete confidence in my elementary knowledge that I liked what I liked, and I definitely did not like pomegranates. Pomegranate, noun. A large mini-belled berry with a mini-celled berry with a leathery red rind and numerous seeds that are each surrounded by an acid, sweet, pink or red pulp. Oxford English Dictionary. Acids taste sour or bitter on our tongues. The acid-sweet pulp is sour-sweet, a contradiction of flavors within the mouth. Taste is inherited, passed down through genes, and visible in infants as young as 6 months old rejecting food they do not appreciate the taste of. It would be natural for children to develop flavor likes or dislikes similar to those of their parents, not only because of genetics, but because this food is prepared for and given to them. As early as 6 years old, I had already begun to reject what my mother preferred. I burst into a veritable oasis. Strange, thin green trunks swept upwards, trailing hundreds of long leaves along the grass below. Taller trees whispered in the breeze, and I marveled at the warmth of the wind that kissed my skin. Used to a March season of chilly, nipping air and mud that sucked my shoes away from me, the cloying, sweet scent of budding desert flowers and the tickle of dry growth under my feet had me fully ensnared in the spring spell. At 10 years old, I'd never met the grandparents on my mother's side. Had I known they lived in paradise, I would have insisted upon it happening earlier. I bounded off towards a corner of the yard I hadn't explored, behind the wooden gate. Running hard, I gathered momentum and used the combination of speed and the gate's crossbar to launch myself around it as fast as possible. Gnarled, grasping branches twisted painfully into my hair, yanking my head backwards. Twigs scratched at my arms and legs, a few striking deep enough to leave long, ugly gashes. Darkness had enveloped me quite suddenly, the cooler air raising goosebumps. Here, the wind screeched instead of sighed. In the shadows, I could faintly make out a deformed trunk where it erupted from the ground. Angling unnaturally and spreading outwards like a brewing, threatening storm cloud, the branches multiplied into thousands of crooked hooks and skeleton fingers that all reached towards me. I thrashed furiously until I finally managed to stumble backwards, right into my mother. I briefly stretched my arms towards her, but she shook me off, annoyed at the interruption. As I fled, the salty, metallic tang of blood filled my mouth. In my momentary frenzy, I'd bitten my tongue. I approached the woman chopping lettuce at the counter, not knowing quite where to begin. Reading my expression, she admonished, "Out with it, you've got a question on your mind. Make it quick, I'm preparing dinner." My eyes widened. "Well, in the back corner of your yard, behind the gate, what is that?" Why, Would have thought you known. I send you a box every year for Christmas. My face must have shown my confusion because my grandmother chuckled and continued, Not a box of the wood, child. Your mother loves them. She'll be glad to get to take so many home with her. It's my pomegranate tree. Pomegranates have been a part of culture and religion for centuries past. In Greek mythology, Persephone is abducted by Hades and eats 6 pomegranate seeds during her stay. For the rest of her existence, she is bound to Hades and must return to him for 6 months of the year. In Buddhism, there exists the legend of a demoness who ate children, cured only when she ate a pomegranate given to her by Buddha. Christian art often depicts pomegranates in pieces involving the Virgin Mary and the child. The most common symbolic interpretations of the pomegranate include the indissolubility of marriage, fertility, and numerous and virtuous posterity. An older wedding tradition is to gift the bride and groom a pomegranate that they smash upon the ground. My mother loves all aspects of pomegranates, and they feature prominently in her snacks and decorations. She insists that she strongly craved pomegranate juice during every pregnancy. After having me and my 3 full siblings, my mother divorced my abusive father in 2011, remarried, and bore a child to my stepfather in 2015. My siblings stood around me, kicking each other with the chilly, salty water that flowed in and out around our feet. The sky looming overhead was one pure mass of gray, an unbroken surface except where the edges of the sun established a faint outline. Squishy sand oozed between my toes, encasing and cooling them quickly. I glanced forward towards the milling crowd, letting the briskness of the ocean air wash through me. Calls were made, kids scampered back to stand in line next to their parents. As we all turned to watch my mother make her way down the stairs, a seagull cried out, harsh, guttural. A knot formed in the bottom of my stomach as I watched her skirt swish towards us, her red vest almost gaudy atop the white ensemble. She passed each of us slowly, relishing the attention, giving each of us a smile in turn. The crashing of the waves rang in my ears, drowning out all sounds of words being exchanged, family murmuring, sibling whispers. I watched her clasp hands with him, place her soft white palms against his tough, hardened fists. I do. My pulse pounded erratically through me, and my eyes focused on the fragile flowers entwined in the braid on the back of my mother's head. Dark red at the center, bled to white on the edges, crimson seeds fading to angelic petals. The perfume that floated after my mother was sickly sweet, with a tang reminiscent of so many days at the house. The tartness of a pomegranate seed filled my mouth. The ceremony was completed, my head throbbed, the family cheered, the wind slashed across my face, I escaped to the sea and heaved. The pomegranate tree is remarkably resilient. Pomegranates can take considerable drought. After the first 2 springs, very little fertilizer is needed. Pomegranates are relatively free of most pests and diseases. The juice of the pomegranate, the pulp, lies protected within a very tough, leathery rind. When cultivating pomegranates, it is common to cut growth back and shorten branches regularly to achieve strong, healthy development. My mother cared for us until my older sister and I were 5 and 4 years old respectively, old enough to take care of ourselves and our siblings. She took the general guideline for cultivating a pomegranate tree to heart. After a few springs, my mother had very little time to do anything for anyone save herself, and had no problem allowing herself and those she married to do as much cutting as they liked. From across the table, I watched my mother's hands busy with her task. The familiar pinpricks of red fell into her metal bowl, the leathery husk rapidly being emptied of its treasures. My hands followed the same pattern, searching, prying. In the background, I listened to the screams of my stepfather aimed at my little sister. A trickle of sweat made its way down my back, a reminder of the suffocating heat of that summer day. My fingernail slashed a seed, sending a small spray of acidic juice along my thumb. From upstairs came the echo of shattering glass, and my movements faltered, fingers shaking slightly. Raising my eyes, I stared at my mother, calmly stripping her rind as the blood-red juice ran down. When the tones of my younger brother's voice entered the din, I leapt up angrily, deep lungs full of sticky, sour air coursing through my body. I glared at her, daring her to meet my burning eyes and accept my challenge. On the table before her there lay a pomegranate so impregnated it had begun to split open, the raw white inner flesh stained crimson from broken seeds. I watched as she casually picked it up and used her knife to slice it open, releasing a trickle of juice that ran down her arm, dripping onto her round, swollen belly. I turned away from my own pile of bitter seeds and bolted upstairs, running to protect what my mother would not. There's a story in the Bible about the owner of a vineyard. He sells his plants and then travels to a far country. When it comes time to collect the harvest, he sends many slaves, one at a time, to do the job. All are killed. He finally sends his own son, who is killed like all the others. Neglecting the fruit of one's labors rarely returns friendly results. My mind was on the report due the next day as I absently flipped through the junk mail. The Mexican market ad lay on the table and I picked it up, surveying a variety of meats and produce. My eye caught a familiar shape and I studied the round red bulb of pomegranate printed on the page. I hadn't tasted one in years, a situation that suited me fine. My mother's hands came to mind as I studied the picture. The hands that held me and each of my siblings after we were born. The hand that she took from my father and willingly bound to another man. The hands that so skillfully, painstakingly discovered and brought out each tiny seed, always searching for more to extract, wanting more, needing more, taking more. I looked down at my own hands, bothered at how they trembled. I thought of how many times I had performed those same actions, cutting the husk, stealing the seeds, tossing away forlorn shells. I glared at the prominent veins on the back of my hand, the curve of my palm, the slim fingers I had inherited from her. As a pomegranate does not choose the tree it grows upon, I had no choice in the mother I was born to. Deliberately, I steady my shaking hands and place the page on the table. I am no Persephone. I am not bound. I cannot change my parent, but her legacy of neglect is hers alone. My strong hands, my clean hands, my rough hands with tiny moles and calluses and scars. These hands are my own.
Hello everyone, I'm Jay. Before the event started tonight, Snow and I were talking about pulling out some older stuff, so I decided to pull out some older poems as well. So I'll read two tonight. The first one is titled Snow Hike. Because it gets lonely, sitting on my couch, avoiding everything outside the gas-heated bubble of my apartment. So I take a midwinter hike on the old juniper trail where snowflakes drop like stars in free fall. I let myself fall away from the boot-packed trail into an infinity of white because I know this snowscape will resculpt itself to cup the numb shape of my body, hold me like a mother holds her baby. For the first time in a long time, I feel held, sagebrush resting beneath me, fragrant junipers folding above. I lie in snow, each flake dissolving like a teardrop into the warm pink of my cheeks. All right, and then this next poem is titled Distraction Display, and it's about a killdeer. Killdeer are really interesting birds because in order to protect their eggs, they'll pretend that their wing is broken to detract the attention. So this one is Distraction Display. It's not hard to identify the killdeer with her eye burning a bitter orange around the pupil like a solar eclipse against the sticks and pebbles, and it isn't hard for her to identify me, the man perched too close to her on a rock, a pencil balanced between two fingers like a cigarette. Perceiving me as a threat to her eggs, she hops towards me and performs a desperate dance, a display of a wing bent broken. I study her choreography, the way she unfurls her wing, steps in circles, unfurls her ring, steps in circles. I unfurl a clean page to sketch her wanting so badly for me to believe her affliction. I outline her wing, her head, and try to forget how it works for artists like us. Artists hoping our imitated injuries might trick death and preserve that part of us still unhatched, that part of us that might mature into something immortal. I'll finish her picture tomorrow, the facade of her fractured wing, the grim eye, that fervid halo of light.
Seems a little low.
Do we have the crank for this guy?
Usually I just pull on it. It's kind of tight, but loose enough that with
I
some
don't want
pressure.
to break anything.
I mean,
This doesn't unscrew. Maybe that's okay.
yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, so I'm old, not like these young people reading from their phones, so we'll see how this goes. Okay. So this, I wasn't planning to read tonight, but because Alex and Sarah read and they had Salt Lake poems to read, and he's wearing a nice t-shirt that says Save the Great Salt Lake, I just thought I'd read a story about What If We Don't. This is part of the Great Salt Lake anthology that Michael McLean is putting together and should be out later this year, I think. It's called Away, Way, Away. She wakes in the night, wind rushing over the skylights. Gusts like whip cracks, like they'll tear the roof from the house, slice through the guttural howl. She rises, slips through the darkened bungalow. Triangles of white light the floor from the street lamp outside. Down the stairs, in the basement, at the furnace, she checks the filters. Gray, red, brown, but still some chalky white. Still some use in them. All year the blower pulls air from all over the house, through the filter, and pushes it back all over the house, cleaner. She'll need new ones soon, but they can wait. She checks the bedroom. The children, 5 and 7, sleep. Little snores mean they're congested again, breathing through their mouths. Without waking them, she gently rolls them to their sides, and the sound of their breathing smooths into a assuring rise and fall. She goes back to bed and lies awake. The glacial wind still grinds. She lists the things that must be done, the things she herself must do, the things she once did, the things she should have done, the things she will yet do, on endless variable repeat. The rasping wind turns to spatters of rain that sound first like fistfuls of gravel on the roof, the siding, the windows, and then grows to a steady crushing static to which she is finally found by sleep. In the morning, she dresses the children, feeds them, washes their faces, oversees the brushing of teeth, hugs them, kisses them, and at the door arranges their outer layers, rain pants and jackets, rubber boots, filter masks, goggles, hoods cinched tight. They look like bug-eyed aliens now, sound like Darth Vader pulling air through his helmet. The children dash from the house into the waiting yellow bus. It roars ahead half a block, stops, waits. 3 more children, similarly enshelled, dash from their homes and into the bus, the door flicking open and shut as if it has swallowed them. It roars ahead again, stops, waits, eats another dashing child, roars ahead again. The bus ride takes nearly 2 hours, but this has become the way it must be done. She wears her own goggles, her own mask, her own protective outer layers. Outside, she assesses the results of the previous night's storm, sees it on every house on the street. The bungalow has been plastered with a layer of gray-brown mud. Already a professional crew with some kind of loud, whirring steam cleaning machine has nearly finished the neighbor's home across the way. She hoses the mud from the roof, the siding, the windows. She scoops fixer from one of the 60-pound sacks stacked in the garage and shakes it out, a scoop at a time, all around the house where the gray-brown mud now lies dark and soaking into the earth near the foundation. She wonders whether the fixer fixes anything, whether the house is now as toxic as she feels. How much arsenic might be in the mud? How much is too much? How many times does it take before it soaks its way inside? Later, she showers to scrub at her skin as if she had not been wearing the hazmat suit. She knows the suit is impermeable, but it is difficult to reconcile logic with fear or fear with logic, whichever way it goes. Now that her husband is gone, if she succumbs, who will care for the children? A wave of nausea surges up through her, delivers her breakfast to the shower floor before she can even think of the toilet. She knows the solution is simple. She must move away. This is no way to live, here on the shores of a once great lake, now just another source of the toxic metal spew whose wind-spun dust splatters her home every time it rains. But where will she go? Her home is here. No one will buy it. She does not have money to move away, to support herself without work, to find another job, another house, another school, another life. She herself has become fixed, as bonded to the surface of this toxic, desiccating earth as the arsenic around the foundation. With her foot, she sweeps the mess of undigested cereal to the drain, presses it through the little holes, lets the hot water rinse it away. There must be a way, she thinks, but if it exists, she cannot see it. Outside, the wind picks up again, blows a low and rustling fugue over the pipe that vents steam from the shower. Away, she thinks. Away, way, away.
Okay, thank you, Charles, Jay, and Snow. And now we have Saoirse and Star.
I'm just gonna hold it. Behind a picket fence. We're behind a white picket fence. A normalcy that couldn't be mine, for I didn't notice a single sign. My toes brush the cool grass. My words lack the cohesion and grace of the tears-forming racetracks down the side of my face. Your hammock is sturdy, albeit a little bit dirty. You sat by my side, consoling me as I cried. Hammocks are attached to this bittersweet memory, to comfort and distress, to nature in the city, to feeling secure with no ground beneath you, a bird in a cage with no one to release you. But the caged bird still sings, and these thoughts a hammock brings. So when I sit and start to swing, I feel the need to laugh and cry, but most of all, thank God I have a friend like you to call mine. My red freckles advertise my pain, my skin too thin to handle the pressure behind my eyes or in my veins. Excitement shifted into anxiety. Butterflies died, became heavy. The curious seedling, breaching frozen earth, wilted and died with insufficient light. Whatever this was, more than like, but not yet love, rapidly went rancid, sizzled, turned acrid. Not the natural process of decomposition, but chemical burning, acidic, consuming. I wasted your time, is what you said, but that's not right. You led me to care and stay in a place that watered my eyes and dissolved my face. So here I am, trying to heal, with melted eyes and burned skin. I didn't deserve this, but I let you in. In the future I will beware. Toxic and caustic, you've taught me caution. My dear paper cut, so unassuming and small. My dear paper cut, my unique pain experienced by all. My dear paper cut, won't you relent? My dear paper cut, unlikely to scar, but the pain is intense. Oh dear paper cut, when I am ready, my heart will fold again into origami.
Sorry, do you want that set up? I can get it. I can adjust it, or you can hold it.
I guess I can hold it.
I can set up.
That would be really
Just entertain the crowd. Just lower the main one down there. We can do this. Oh, it's performance art.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, thank you, Ben. Sure.
Thank you, Ben. So, Alex and Sarah, your readings were really inspiring. And because of that, I stole some of your words. Alex, bone on bone joints and a heart full of harm for its own well-being. Toxic world, air thick, lake hollow, skin burned back to first thirst. Darkness, darker than any imagining, grave earth, an impasse. A valley, impressed, will only flare its coral skirt for evening's first blink. Once there was a furred carnivore who dozed every day at the foot of a blue-needled shade. River, its cool sister, flickering, laughing. One red spire shading everything won't relieve such yearning. Come back, go back to the meadow, the body, its charred bones and tumbled heart. Sarah, tumbling, all stars are delicious, all snakes are muscular, diamonds glint at the end of a rope, sidewinding. The sky extends the world like sound extends itself, like birdsong in the early day, like sunset, opening into color all the way, wrapping its light in a muscular hug. Like the dust of a yellow warbler who pressed its last starry diamonds of song on the shining clarity of a sky reflected in glass.
Okay, we're just gonna do this. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to all of our readers and to Ben for being a hero with the mic. And thank you for spending, I think this is the last Thursday in August? I could be wrong, I don't know math. Yeah, thank you for spending your last Thursday in August here with us tonight. If you liked Helicon and want to come back, on September 12th, at the Cash Arts Mansion, we will have Amber Karen reading from her recently published book, which I should know the title of. I'm gonna look at Charles like, nope. It's a really good book, I think. I'm really excited to hear from it. And Amber is incredible. And thank you again for all being here, and have a good night.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.